And I remember Joe Shane calling me from who's now the general manager of the Giants, and he's like, "Hey, we're moving them. I don't really want to move them, but we're moving them there." And John always liked him, Dorsey, and he was like, "We got him. I love it that we have him here." And so it really worked out great because he really got the player that he was looking for to really develop and build. And one interesting thing too, and this kind of goes back to the draft process, was you know when the Redskins were having their local pro day, they hadn't invited Wyatt. And even though he was from the local area, it was really surprising that they didn't invite him. So I had called Bill Callahan, who was their line coach there, and I said, "Hey, coach, I think this guy really fits who you are and what you look for in offensive lineman. He's tough, he's strong, hard worker, physical, finishes plays." And he said, "Well, Andy, I watched his film and I didn't really see that in his senior film." And so I said, "Well, hey, let me explain to you what's kind of happening at Virginia Tech." And I said, "Will you go back and watch his junior film? And so now that you understand what's going on this senior year, let me kind of tell you what's happened, go back and see the player that he was his junior year." Because it was a coach, he had to watch so many different players. He didn't go back and watch that film. Well, they didn't even have Wyatt on their board. He went back and watched the junior film. Bill calls me back up and he says, "Hey, I really like this guy." He goes, "I want to bring him in for our local pro day." So they end up bringing him in. Bill calls me afterwards. He's like, "Andy, I absolutely love this kid." He's like, "We went from not having him on our board to now we've got like a fifth round grade on him." I said, "Well, I think there's a chance he could go higher than that, but we'll see. I'm glad that he's on your board now." Well, they ended up not drafting him because Buffalo had drafted him. Bill really had wanted him as a player. He was bummed that he didn't get him. And I always told Wyatt, I said, "The perfect coach for you is Bill Callahan." Well, it's amazing how life works. He goes from Buffalo to Cleveland. After that, Bill gets hired as the O-line coach there. They totally click and hit it off. Wyatt goes from being a backup in Buffalo to midway through the season becoming the starter in Cleveland. Had a whole list of things to work on that offseason that Bill had given him. He worked his butt off, comes back the following year, and now has back-to-back all-pro season